touching the left side of your neck.
The clock above the monitor clicked silently. 3:07 a.m. Emily rubbed the sleep from her eyes, the fluorescent light of the dispatch center buzzing faintly, doing little to dispel the profound sense of night. The office was immense, cool, and nearly empty. Only 3 consoles were staffed, the remaining 20 chairs sitting vacant and shrouded in shadow. Emily was 2 hours into the graveyard shift, the silence broken only by the distant, rhythmic squeak of the janitor's mop. She felt the heavy weight of isolation that the late hours always brought, the sense of being a small, fragile listening post connected to a vast, dark, and indifferent city. Her console blinked. Incoming call. Restricted. Emily clicked the headset on. 911, what is the location of your emergency? Her voice was practiced, detached, masking her profound exhaustion. The voice that answered was low, calm, and utterly clear. It was male, with a resonant quality that made the hair on her arms prickle. He wasn't speaking quickly or with distress. There is no emergency, Emily. Not yet. Emily frowned, already navigating the interface to initiate a standard trace. Sir, if this is not an emergency, I have to disconnect. Do you need a welfare check? No welfare check needed, the voice continued, smooth and unnervingly familiar, yet one she couldn't immediately place. I can assure you, Emily, my welfare is fine. It's yours I'm calling about. Emily's hands froze over the keyboard. She glanced at the 2 other operators, but their backs were turned, their attention focused on distant screens. The violation was immediate and intensely personal. Sir, you have reached the emergency line. If you do not state the nature of your call, I am terminating the connection. Emily warned, her voice tightening with professional anger, though her heart had begun a cold, rapid beat. The man chuckled, a quiet, dry sound that seemed to come from right behind her ear. You really shouldn't work so late, Emily. You look quite tired tonight. You keep touching the left side of your neck, right where the fluorescent light flickers over your skin. Emily's entire body went rigid. Her hand was indeed resting on the left side of her neck, a habit she'd only developed this week. The light directly above her console was, at that very moment, sputtering erratically. Her isolated fear dissolved into cold, immediate dread. Who is this? Where are you? She demanded, her voice now raw with terror, frantically trying to view the rapidly assembling trace data on her screen. I have to go now, Emily. The clock is ticking. The voice said softly, and the line immediately went dead, leaving behind only the cold, high-pitched static of the line. Emily ripped the headset off, her breath catching in her throat, staring wildly at the dark, silent corners of the vast dispatch room. The final trace location remained frustratingly blank. Emily sat motionless, the dead static of the line echoing in her mind. She reported the incident immediately, detailing the specific personal nature of the call. The supervisor, a grizzled man named Frank, was sympathetic but pragmatic, classifying it as a sophisticated, high-level crank call, a skilled hacker using a VoIP cloak. Emily knew better. The fear settling in her stomach was too cold, too specific to be a simple prank. The next hour crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity of silence. Emily focused desperately on the dull routine of her job, but every dark corner of the enormous, empty dispatch room felt loaded with potential threat. At 4:15 a.m., the console blinked again. Incoming call, restricted. Emily's hands were slick with sweat. She hesitated, then forcibly clicked the headset on, her voice strained and tight. 911, what is the location of your emergency? The calm, resonant male voice returned instantly, the intimacy now amplified by the long silence between calls. You should know better to lie to the police, Emily. I told you, I'm concerned about your welfare. You look much better in that red blouse than you did in the uniform yesterday, though the coffee stain on the cuff is a new addition.
Emily felt a wave of icy sickness wash over her. She was wearing a plain, non-uniform red blouse under her headset, a fact invisible from the security cameras and known only to her. The coffee stain had happened 20 minutes ago. The man wasn't just watching the room, he was watching her. Who gave you this information? Emily demanded, frantically initiating the trace sequence again. The man ignored her question, his voice dropping into a soft, reminiscent tone. And that little shed you kept your bike in, behind the split oak tree? The one where your father always forgot to replace the latch? That old house has character, Emily. I'm outside the house where you grew up. The specificity was a devastating blow. The shed, the split oak, that was a tiny private detail of her childhood home, a fact that had never appeared on any public record or social media profile. The trace data began to resolve, showing a blocked but rough geographical location 10 miles north, the exact neighborhood of her parents' house. Emily's panic broke through her professional veneer. "Police, send a patrol car, immediate welfare check, 4012 Crestwood Drive, officer safety alert, possible armed intruder." She relayed the address, her voice shaking violently as she repeated the command to the stunned operator beside her. Minutes later, the police unit radioed back. The report was concise and chilling. "Crestwood Drive is clear. Perimeter swept. No vehicles, no activity, no signs of forced entry. The occupants, her parents, are asleep and safe." The calm voice returned over the line, laced with a chilling amusement. "I didn't say I was at their house, Emily. I said the house you grew up in. I know your mother doesn't appreciate you making them worry." The line went dead, leaving Emily staring at the monitor. He hadn't been at her parents' house. He had been exactly where he said he was, outside the physical building that held her childhood memories. He was playing with her history, using her personal truth to establish absolute psychological dominance. Supervisor Frank returned, his face tight with controlled frustration. He issued rapid instructions, sending the other two remaining operators home early, citing the low call volume and the need to investigate Emily's complaint privately. By 5:30 a.m., Emily was alone on the vast, dimly lit dispatch floor. The silence was immense, heavy, and terrifyingly cold. She was the sole listening post in the dark, empty void. The phone rang again. Incoming call restricted. Emily took a shaky breath and clicked the line on, her voice barely a whisper. 911, you're still calling the emergency line." "I am the emergency, Emily. I see your supervisor left you all alone. That was unwise. You know your neighbor's dog, the one with the annoying bark, is quiet tonight. I made sure of that." Emily felt a wave of profound nausea. She lived in a third-floor apartment. The neighbor's dog was a small yappy terrier. The detail was irrelevant, intimate, and designed to break her resolve. "Stop this, Emily," pleaded, fighting to regain control. "What do you want? Why are you doing this?" "I want what you hide, Emily. The guilt, the fear, the truth about that summer before college."
The psychological assault was precise. The reference to the summer before college, the brief, terrible event she had meticulously erased from her memory, was a shock so potent it momentarily paralyzed her. She seized the opportunity. Driven by a desperate need for a technical lifeline, she initiated a level 4 triangulation sequence, a complex, continuous trace reserved for bomb threats and active shooter situations. It was highly illegal to use on a nuisance call, but Emily didn't care. She kept him talking, her questions focused on the past, her mind focused on the computer screen. The caller continued his low surgical dissection of her life, holding the connection open. "You never told anyone what you saw in that creek, did you, Emily? You kept the silence." "I told the police everything," Emily cried, her voice cracking with the memory. "No, you told the police what they needed to hear, but I know the rest." As the man spoke, the trace data flashed rapidly. The screen finally coalesced, the level 4 triangulation achieving an unprecedented, terrifying precision. A single, distinct GPS dot appeared on the massive digital map of the city. The dot was stable. The call wasn't coming from a distant tower or a parked car. Emily stared, frozen, her breath trapped in her throat. The computer screen showed the flashing red dot positioned directly on top of her personal home address. The source of the voice, the location of the man who knew her deepest secrets, was inside her apartment. The calm voice whispered one final chilling statement over the static. "The shift is almost over, Emily. I'm waiting for you to come home." The line went dead, leaving Emily completely alone in the cold, silent dispatch center, facing the absolute immediate terror of her final destination. Emily didn't wait for Supervisor Frank to return. Her fear had transformed into pure survival-driven adrenaline. She grabbed her purse and keys, throwing on her jacket. She quickly radioed the active police channel, bypassing the dispatch operator who would have been sympathetic but slow. "Attention all units, this is Operator Emily Vance. I'm initiating a distress call. My home address, 408 Willow Creek, is compromised. Caller is a known, dangerous subject. I need a rapid response unit, code 3 to my location. I am en route now." She kept the channel open, the reassuring crackle of police chatter her only lifeline. She sprinted to her small car, the sudden daylight outside doing nothing to dispel the terror of the night's work. She drove at a reckless speed, her eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a car tailing her, half expecting to see the silent watching presence. The drive was a blur of highway and quiet suburban streets. She kept the police updated, her voice tight, detailing the minutes until her arrival.
The officers confirmed they were en route but were still 5 minutes out. She reached her street. The neighborhood was quiet, houses dark and set back from the road. Her own house, a small, isolated 2-story, looked unnervingly normal, yet utterly wrong. Emily braked sharply, the engine cutting out. The air felt instantly heavy. The front door was wide open. It hadn't been forced, it was simply left ajar, swinging gently in the morning breeze. An open invitation, a deliberate violation. The interior of the house was plunged into blackness, the windows reflecting the cold gray light. Emily grabbed the heaviest object she owned, a large police-issue metal flashlight. She clicked it on. The powerful beam cut a sharp, defensive swath through the gloom. She kept the open police channel pressed to her ear. The sound of her own ragged breathing broadcast to the responding officers. I'm at the house. The door is open. Lights are off. I'm going inside. She stepped across the threshold. The silence inside was oppressive. The cold she had felt in the dispatch center was replicated here, an immediate, profound drop in temperature. But the most immediate violation was the smell. It was a potent, unsettling blend, a heavy, sweet old cologne, something archaic and sickly sweet, mixed with the sickening, earthy tang of decay and wet earth. The smell was thick, suffocating, and pervasive, confirming the presence of something ancient and foul.
Emily shone the beam down the central hall. The floorboards were clear, but near the kitchen, the light caught something dark and wet. Muddy footprints, large, heavy, and unnervingly distinct, led away from the front door. They didn't lead to the living room or the bedrooms. They led directly to the dark, narrow wooden door tucked under the main staircase. The door to the basement. Emily clicked the basement door open, the heavy wood scraping against the frame. The darkness that rushed out was absolute, dense and cold, intensified by the sickening mix of old cologne and decay. She kept the police channel open, her breathing ragged and loud in the mic. "I'm entering the basement," Emily whispered. "The door was locked. I see footprints." She descended the concrete steps slowly, cautiously, her powerful flashlight beam sweeping the cold, cavernous space. The air was colder here, stagnant, and heavy with the smell of wet earth. The basement was a labyrinth of storage boxes and forgotten furniture. But in the far corner, tucked away behind a stack of moth-eaten blankets, she saw it. A chillingly organized, makeshift living space. There was a sleeping bag rolled out on the concrete floor, empty food wrappers scattered nearby, and a small, functional-looking landline phone resting on a milk crate. Her light beam snapped upward. Taped crudely to the exposed concrete wall above the sleeping bag were photos of her. Not professional shots, but dozens of candid pictures. Emily walking her dog, Emily leaving her car, Emily sitting at her desk. The timeline stretched back years, a horrifying visual journal of invasion and obsession. She turned the light toward the center of the space. Sitting upright in a broken antique armchair was a figure. Emily gasped, her flashlight beam shaking violently. It wasn't the man she expected. It was a skeleton, or a mummified corpse, dried out and covered in tight, leathery skin, its features stretched and fixed in a silent, eternal grimace. The corpse was dressed in heavy, outdated clothing, and its bony hand rested on the armrest. The landline phone receiver lay abandoned on the floor beside the chair, the cord dangling. Emily's mind locked up, unable to process the profound violation. The corpse was the stalker. He hadn't been calling her for hours. He had been dead, sitting here in her basement, watching her life through pictures. Then, the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle slid into place. The calm, chilling male voice returned over her police headset, perfectly clear, utterly resonant, and completely detached from the silent horror in front of her. "Do you see me now, Emily?" Emily stared at the corpse, then frantically at the phone receiver dangling on the floor. The voice wasn't coming from the dead man. She swung her flashlight beam wildly across the dark cavern. The air was cold, but the light source caught something moving. Not the skeleton, but the deep, dark shadows behind the massive, ancient furnace unit. The cold, earthy smell intensified. "I told you I was waiting for you to come home. I didn't say I was waiting in the chair." The shadow behind the furnace moved again. It was deep, dark, and utterly impenetrable. Emily realized the dead man in the chair was merely a discarded decoy. The true threat was alive, cold, and hiding just feet away, waiting for her to step fully into the basement's cold embrace. I didn't say I was waiting in the chair. The shadow behind the furnace moved again. Emily screamed, a sharp raw sound of terror and disbelief, and stumbled backward up the concrete steps. She kept the powerful flashlight beam fixed on the darkness. The figure stepped out. It was a man, dressed in the same heavy, outdated clothing as the corpse. He was gaunt and unnaturally pale, his movements gliding and silent. Adam's heart hammered against her ribs, recognizing the face instantly. It was Mark, her high school stalker, the quiet, obsessive boy who had vanished without a trace 10 years ago. The shock was profound. Mark hadn't aged a day. His face was smooth, young, and terrifyingly fixed, lacking the lines of time or sun exposure. His eyes were wide, black, and radiated the cold, earthy dread of the basement itself. He was not fully human. "Hello, Emily," Mark whispered, his voice no longer distorted through the phone, but clear, low, and utterly possessive. "Did you forget about me? I've been living in your walls, right beside you. I fixed the squeaky floorboards just so you wouldn't know I was there." He advanced slowly, steadily. "You are mine, Emily. I've been feeding on your life, your energy, your memories. The guilt from that summer, it keeps me strong. We belong together in the dark." The final sentence was the trigger for the attack. Mark lunged with terrifying, unnatural speed, his hands, cold and surprisingly strong, lashing out to seize her. Emily dropped the flashlight, sending its beam skittering across the floor. The sound of the police channel crackling uselessly in her ear was drowned out by her own panicked scream. She seized a heavy, rusted metal pipe leaning against the stairs and swung it violently. The pipe struck Mark across the chest with a heavy, sickening clang. He didn't stumble, he only paused, the impact absorbing into his unnaturally hard form. The effect had no blow. "Don't fight it," Mark hissed, grabbing her wrist with a crushing grip. "You can't win. I know every weakness in this house. I know every place you hide." Emily fought with desperate, survival-driven fury. He knew the house, but she knew the objects within. She kicked out, her heel connecting with a sharp blow to the old furnace unit, sending a cloud of soot and rust into the air. The distraction was momentary. She wrenched her arm free and slammed a stack of forgotten canned goods into his chest, the heavy tin battering his body. The struggle was brutal, silent save for the heavy exertion. Mark was relentless, his touch radiating the profound cold of the grave. He grabbed her hair, pulling her head back, exposing her throat for the final lethal bite. Emily, gasping for air, saw her chance. Her hand seized a shattered wooden chair leg lying among the debris. With a final surge of survival instinct, she plunged the sharp, splintered wood into his exposed upper thigh. Mark let out a sharp, unnatural shriek of pain, the first real sound of weakness. He stumbled backward, the cold fury in his eyes mixed with genuine agony, pulling the splintered chair leg from his thigh. The wound didn't bleed conventionally. A thin, black, oily substance oozed from the torn flesh. Emily didn't wait. She scrambled backward, her eyes searching the chaotic space for a final defense. Mark recovered instantly, his rage eclipsing his pain. He lunged toward the abandoned landline phone receiver that lay near the skeletal corpse. He seized the thick black cord and ripped it violently from the wall. The cord elongated, snapping like a whip. Mark launched himself at Emily, wrapping the cord swiftly and brutally around her throat. The impact slammed Emily against the concrete wall, knocking the breath from her lungs. He pressed his weight forward, his hands pulling the cord taut, leveraging the physical power he had gained from years of feeding on her life force. The cord cut into her flesh, and she struggled, scratching desperately at his cold, unyielding face. She felt her vision dimming, her consciousness fading. Her blindly scrabbled across the concrete floor, searching for any object. Her fingers brushed against a cold, round metal can. Paint thinner. With a final desperate surge of survival instinct, she seized the can and, ignoring the crushing pressure on her throat, brought it up and savagely smashed it against Mark's head. The old rusty lid popped off, and the volatile liquid sprayed directly over Mark's face and torso, drenching his outdated clothes. Mark recoiled slightly in surprise, but held the cord tight. Emily saw her chance. Her hand found the discarded metal flashlight, its battery dead, but its metal housing scraped clean from the earlier struggle. She brought the exposed metal of the flashlight and the severed, sparking telephone wires near Mark's face. The ignition was instant and catastrophic. A brilliant, terrifying whoosh engulfed Mark's head and chest. The paint thinner, highly flammable, exploded into hungry orange flame. Mark released the cord instantly, letting out a horrific, inhuman howl of agonizing pain. The flames consumed him rapidly, illuminating the entire basement in a savage, flickering light. The fire began to lick aggressively at the dry, century-old timber of the ceiling joists. Emily dropped to the floor, coughing violently, the firelight casting terrifying, dancing shadows. Her throat was raw, but she was free. She scrambled instantly toward the stairs. The fire was spreading with terrifying speed, fueled by the debris and the old dry structure. She reached the top landing and slammed the heavy wooden door shut. Mark's agonized screams, no longer human, but distorted, terrifying howls of burning rage, hammered against the other side. Emily seized the heavy slide bolt and shoved it home. She heard Mark's massive, flaming body slam against the sealed door, the wood groaning and cracking under the impossible impact. She knew the fire had bought her precious seconds. She was out, but the house was now burning, and the true monster was trapped, desperate and raging in the heart of the inferno. The fire spread with devastating speed. Emily stumbled out of the front door just as the flames began to lick aggressively at the windows. She collapsed onto the wet lawn, choking violently on the smoke and the acrid smell of burning chemicals and timber. The house, the physical manifestation of Mark's obsession, was rapidly consuming itself. Sirens screamed, arriving from the direction of her earlier call. Fire trucks and police cars swarmed the quiet suburban street. Emily, raw, bleeding and coughing, was immediately pulled away by paramedics. The fire was eventually contained, but the old timber structure was a total loss. The investigation was chaotic, complicated by the skeletal remains found in the basement corner. The police confirmed the mummified corpse was indeed Mark's body from 10 years prior, a horrifying testament to the depth of his obsession and isolation. But the body of the current assailant, the one Emily had fought and burned, was missing. Near the sealed basement door, fire crews found only a heavy residue of fine black ash and scorched fabric. The immense heat had consumed the animated body entirely, leaving no trace of bone or flesh. Mark had vanished again, escaping the confines of his physical form. Emily was hospitalized, treated for severe burns on her hand and neck and absolute psychological trauma. She spent 3 days giving a careful clinical account, omitting only the details of the feeding and the voice coming from the shadows. The police filed the report as a tragic case of a deceased person's unknown relative, Mark, living secretly in the house, eventually succumbing to a psychological breakdown and accidental self-immolation. Released from the hospital, Emily avoided her ruined home. She checked into a sterile, anonymous hotel room 20 miles from the city center, seeking quiet, clean sanctuary. She took a sleeping pill, desperate to escape the memory of the cold basement and the smell of burning flesh. The room was dark, silent, and supposedly safe. Emily finally drifted into a shallow, exhausted sleep. At 3:15 a.m., the time of the morning when the world belonged to the unseen, the phone beside her bed shrieked instantly. Emily's eyes snapped open instantly, her heart hammering against her ribs, the trauma of the past night flooding her senses. The bedside clock glowed menacingly. She knew the time, and she knew the call. She slowly reached for the receiver, her hand trembling violently. She lifted it to her ear. The line was not silent. It was filled with a low, chaotic static, the same high-pitched hiss she had fought in her headset. And beneath the static, thin, dry, and infinitely close, she heard it. A faint, chilling laugh. It was dry and cold, laced with triumph, immediately followed by a low, possessive whisper. "I told you I'd be waiting for you to come home, Emily." The line disconnected. Emily sat upright in the dark hotel room, the proof of her unfixable trauma clutched in her hand. He was not gone. The structural weakness in her life was now permanently open, and the voice was always listening. The line is never truly dead. Tell me in the comments, have you ever received a call from an unknown number that knew your name? If you want to hear the next tape, subscribe.